Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Baka podcast.
Baka.
It's amazing how every time you open your mouth, you prove you're an idiot.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Baka. We are an anime podcast. Every 2 weeks, we watch an anime. We come together on this podcast. We talk about it. That's basically it, except for the comment section where you guys fill in all the important information that we were too stupid to notice and talk about. That's it's not hard to explain. I do it every week. Anyway, to talk about the animes that we watch, let me introduce my co-host. First off, we have the Eins al Ghul to my overlord, Jeremy. How you doing?
Okay, so you're going with the skeleton theme. I was wondering which theme you'd pick. I was thinking, is it going to be retail outlets? Is it going to be books? I didn't see that one coming. That's okay. Okay.
Spooky, scary skeletons.
Yeah, you can answer my question anytime. How you doing?
I'm still taking apart what you did. I'm doing pretty good. Yeah. Actually, I played and finished Stick of Truth. I know I'm late to the party. Amazing game. That was so great. Oh my god. It's been a while since I've watched any South Park. Just kind of it got away from me. I haven't kept up. And just getting to experience being in that world and playing along with their game for a while and seeing it escalate from just a silly game with kids where everybody knows they're not getting hurt. They're just pretending, and like you can hit them when they're down after you've killed them and they'll be like, ow, stop it. Stop. You're a jerk. Until later in the game, you actually are killing things and the world has just gone to hell. And
Crab
it's so good.
Looked like a crab.
Yes.
So when are you moving on to Fractured But Whole?
As soon as I can afford it. I got to go pick it up, but I definitely want to play that right away. I actually got Phone Destroyer for my mobile phone. I went online and I'm like, okay, tell me all the South Park games. I don't even care how bad they are. And like, well, I mean, it's a fun game, but it's got microtransactions and, you know, I'm never going to buy them. So
as long as Trey and Matt have input into what's being made, it's almost always worth at least checking out.
So good. So good.
Okay. So we also have our other host. He is the Crypt Keeper to my Tales from the Crypt, Jason. Well done. How are you?
Doing pretty good. Just got back from my Vegas trip, so that was it was really fun, but it was 3 days without a PC, so I was but I did get more into Dauntless, and I am actually very pleasantly surprised. The game's really tightened up, and the microtransactions aren't all in your face, which I think is nice for free to play. I think going the route of Fortnite has probably improved their image as well as the reachability of their audience. And also, like, crossplay between all platforms is pretty sweet. It's kind of neat to get in a group and you see a little Xbox symbol and a PlayStation 4 symbol. And so
very cool.
Yeah.
And my name is Troy, and I've joined the Church of Satan.
Whoa.
I mean, I watched Lucifer, then I watched Good Omens. I figured this was just the natural progression from the past 2 weeks of things I said. No, I did finish Good Omens, and I really, really loved it. And then I started Stranger Things 3 this week.
I need to finish the first season.
And I'm halfway through season 3, so no spoilers.
Season 3's actually already got that many episodes out?
Well, it's Netflix. They all come out at once.
Wow. I saw the trailer where it's some kids walking past these old women that are like, yeah, ooh, hot. And that's as much as I know about what season 3's about.
Oh, okay. That's not much what it's about, but
okay. It kind of turned me off. I'm like, well, this is boring. This is not what I wanted to see.
So if season 1 is throwback to certain horror movies, I can't remember, but the second one kind of had like an Aliens feel. This one has kind of a Invasion of the Body Snatchers feel to it.
Okay, I like that.
But cool. I mean, it's still really the same character, same horror elements. It's good. It's been good. I'm enjoying it so far. Hopper's great. Dustin and Steve being best friends is literally, I could watch a show just about them hanging out at the ice cream store.
Is 11 just as powerful as the other?
Yep. She's still pretty good. But the bad guys seem pretty threatening this time too. But can we talk about how great Steven is as a character? Oh, Jason hasn't finished season 1. We can't.
Which one is Steven?
Great hair. Steve.
Who?
Steve, great hair. Great hair, Steve.
Great hair, Steve.
Nancy's boyfriend in the first season. The jerk boyfriend in the first season.
Yeah,
great hair.
Okay.
One of the best TV characters of all time. Just
he was pretty cool. Yeah.
The fact that character you hate has such a great arc. It's like, man, that is so
it
cool.
catches you off guard.
If it sounds like we're stalling, we might be. Because the anime we watch is something different in many ways than anything we've ever watched on this podcast before. Partially that was due to things like vacations, people moving into houses. I'm lazy. So
could have left that last one out.
So Jeremy picked Skullface Bookseller Handa-san, which is a comedy series. It is based on Honda-san's true experiences working in a Japanese manga bookstore. And it's only 11-minute episodes with 12 episodes. So it's about half the content of our usual podcast. So we don't know how this is going to affect us going forward, especially since, like I said, it was true experiences. So there's not like character arcs or things like that when we watch this. So we're going to still talk about it. We're going to dive into it. It's also the most slice of life thing we've ever watched. So we may touch on that topic. But we will do what we can, and we'll see what the runtime ends up being. If you planned your day around us being 2 hours long, I mean, we let you down all the time anyway. So why would you be surprised now?
Let's call out that, one, Jeremy picked the slice of life anime.
Again.
Again. But two, like, you say they're 11 minutes episodes, but there's like a minute on each side, so they're really only like 9-minute content.
Yeah.
Yep.
You watched the intro and the outro every time, right?
I actually did.
Oh.
So I try really hard to always watch the anime we watch legit. So I watched through the Crunchyroll app, and their commercials are horrendous. And with an 11-minute episode, they start with a commercial, they play the intro, they play another commercial, they go through the thing, sometimes play the commercial in the middle, and then play a commercial before the outro, which then goes to another commercial for the next episode. I spent half the time watching commercials, and I was quite furious.
I've been paying for Crunchyroll for quite some time, ever since probably about 3 months ago, I started playing for Crunchyroll because, I was tired of the commercials.
I had VRV, and then when they broke the deal between Crunchyroll and Funimation, I just couldn't anymore, and so now I just use the apps for free when I can, and when I can.
Yeah, I killed my VRV because they just, they're trying to be too much to too many.
Okay. So let's go to our non-spoiler reviews of this anime. Jeremy, you picked it. What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. It's certainly not really in my wheelhouse, but I'm always wanting to see if I can prove myself wrong. Maybe find a slice of life that I actually really, really enjoy. But it's entertaining. I definitely have a bit of a connection with the character because I have worked retail in the past, did for a couple of years, and I definitely did not enjoy the aspect of having to deal with people in retail. So I can very much identify with Honda in the sort of nervous reaction and just desire to get out of the situation rather than deal with it as much as possible. It was entertaining. I'm really glad they were short.
Can I ask you a follow-up? What did you think this was when you chose it? Did you think it was exactly what we got, or were you thinking it was something else?
No, I genuinely thought that there would be some kind of story arc or some kind of, some kind of development between the different characters, that there would be something a little bit more interesting. For me, this really came across more like a Sunday morning comic strip or a Saturday morning comic strip that was just kind of animated a little bit better. I was also very curious because of the animation style. And so I thought, where are they going to go with this? I remember seeing a little bit of Mononoke, and not Princess Mononoke, but Mononoke, the horror anime, the first couple episodes, and just how strange that the anime style was, what it did to that anime. I wanted to see if this was going to do something interesting with the fact that he's a skeleton, if it was going to have some kind of irony, some kind of playback with the humor or something. But I would say if it did that, it did it in a very, very gentle, light way, not what I thought it was going to do.
Okay. Jason, what'd you think?
I actually enjoyed it. I didn't think I would. And I think the reason I liked it so much is because it was very much what I might have going on in my head if I was talking with a coworker that I didn't know very well. We were exchanging, war stories of working in at your job. And it was extremely relatable. And, obviously it's based off true stories of this guy's experiences. And I've never worked actual retail, but I've worked a lot of customer service. And especially in moments where there's a moment we'll talk about with a guy that seems very Yakuza. That was, I didn't ever find myself like busting up laughing, but smiling a lot. And I think this was definitely worth a watch, especially if you've been in that particular job environment.
For me, I should preface with I have no retail experience. I was in food services for about 3 months and did not do well. I worked in a quiet library, so I was around books, but it was a very different environment than this. And then I've been a behind the desk office worker, like I said, almost no customer experience. So a lot of this I had no relation to, and there's not really character arcs, so I didn't really relate to any of the characters. With that said, I found it enjoyable, and I wasn't upset with watching it. The short runtime did help. I also have this weird, I don't want to super criticize this anime because I've never felt like I've met a creator that of what we've watched so much. Like his personal feelings are out there on display in this anime, the Honda's. And, he wrote this manga that's now an anime, so he's sharing with us. And now I don't want to come in and be like, your story is trash. Like he's a guy doing his best. And now I know that from the story. It's a very personal connection with how this story is told, and that it is true stories from him. And that is affecting me a little bit as a reviewer that no anime before. I almost never think about like, there's a writer there who's, obviously more talented than me, but this story sucks, so he needs to do better. And I don't want to say anything like that to Honda. He's, especially if he's working 2 jobs, doing his best.
It certainly makes him more sympathetic. And there's a couple of points where other characters, it's clearly marked on the screen, this is an actual bookseller voicing this character. And it did the same thing. I absolutely loved that. It made it very human.
Yeah, even there were moments like that where it was like, this is their opinion, or this is specifically my opinion, not the opinion of, whatever.
Yep.
And also, they're blatant, but, trying not to get copyrighted, like, attempt at naming franchises was fantastic.
That was really good. I had a lot of fun trying to see if I could pick out the franchises, and I did okay sometimes.
Or when you saw... the Deku.
Yes.
With the pumpkin face. It's like, okay, come on, you're not even trying at this point.
Yep.
All right. What did you guys think of the opening and closing?
Forgettable.
I actually liked the closing. The more I heard it, I really started to like it. The opening was good, but yeah, I would say forgettable ultimately.
They weren't bad. They were just, they were fine.
Did anyone else keep hearing the Red Hot Chili Pepper song in the opening? The dun 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun,
I don't like
dun,
Red
dun.
Hot Chili Peppers.
Well, get the hell off this podcast, sir.
It was familiar, but I didn't place it. That's probably what it was.
I was like, that's not the song, and it's not. But I kept, and I'm having drawn a blank on what the song actually is. But I'm sure it's a Red Hot Chili
Oh, I
Peppers.
thought you were a Red Hot Chili Peppers fan.
I'm really only a fan of Californication, which I hope that's not the song I'm actually talking about.
No, it's not.
Anyway, closing, I was like, nah, it's fine.
Yeah.
I was usually mad because a commercial had just played, and I knew another commercial was coming. So,
Can't I just turn it off now? Do I have to listen to the outro?
anyway, let's go into our spoiler section. There's not a ton of plot here. Again, this is a comedy, so we'll be over explaining jokes and
Your favorite.
How do you make a joke more funny? Over-explain it.
Yes.
talk about it. Just describe something funny that you saw to someone. Always works out great. So this is a anime set in a world. It's our world. It's just, it's normal life.
Yeah, that's the thing is I thought they would play more on the skeleton thing, like Jamie was saying, but it was just a mask. I mean, yeah, you could see the vertebra going down into his shirt, but
it's how he draws his character, but it's very clearly implied that he's just a person, and that this is how we are seeing him because that's how he wants us to see him. And I'm going to come back to that in just a second. How much did you guys going into this and coming out of this know about Japanese bookstores? Because I was like, oh, this must be a big thing. If I had gone to Japan, I wouldn't have thought to visit a manga bookstore. Because, I mean, we have places you can buy manga in America, clearly, but I didn't realize it was such a big deal in Japan. That, like, because through this whole thing, there's like tourists stopping by. This is a big deal for them to stop and come here.
It's a big deal for a couple of reasons. So, like, growing up, specifically here in the Seattle area, we have tons of bookstores, chain bookstores and tiny hole-in-the-wall bookstores. And the thing is that, with the surge of Amazon and online, purchasing, bookstores are near non-existent anymore. And that doesn't seem to be a problem here in the States. But what I know from my exposure to Japanese culture is, those mangas, those light novels are extremely sought after as far as a physical means, because most people don't like to read them online. And I'm finding it's funny because, like, I'll hand my kid a manga, and he reads it all the time on his phone, and he'll burn through it like real fast if it's in his hand physically. It just seems to be a different experience.
I definitely have found that, like, using e-readers or trying to read anything online, I absolutely hate it compared to reading something in my hands made of paper.
Do you feel particular weird fatigue when you do it online?
Yeah, and it doesn't stick with me. I don't remember it as well. Yeah.
Okay, I like e-readers, and I almost always exclusively now read comic books online.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah, I can't personally stand it. I always wanted to work in a bookstore, and so for me, watching this was like, oh, I guess this is what it would have been like had I gotten that Barnes and Noble job or something, some facsimile.
This feels different from even an American bookstore because mangas come out in volumes, and they, you have to keep growing. It's not like, hey, here's the new Stephen King book, and it just goes here. It's like, hey, another volume of Dragon Ball Z has come out. We need to put it with the other Dragon Ball Zs or feature it, but now it's taking up too much shelf room. And so that goes into all of that. The fact that it's they're half comic books, half, American books. There's kind of this in between that they have to deal with. I thought that was pretty interesting, actually.
I don't think we have that kind of fervor or movement of product with bookstores here in the States that they would in a manga shop in, say, Tokyo. Not only just because of traffic, but because, like you were saying, what was it? Karakawa would do daily shipments of their stuff, and I don't think we have any. And I think that's a cultural thing, specifically with manga and light novels. that we just don't have that kind of culture here. So specifically with bookstores here in the States, I don't think you would be that busy as they were depicted in the anime.
Are we sure that it's just a manga store? Because I mean, there was a couple of moments where they were talking about books, like the one about the Ebola breakout, that didn't look like a manga to me. It looked like it was, because he said it's like a nonfiction.
It was
book.
a manga about it.
Was it? I thought he said it was a nonfiction book.
They did have a light novel section and stuff, but the main feature of this bookstore is that they carry manga and Japanese comic books. But like they had an American comic book section and with the
foreign comic books.
Yeah. But the main, like 90% or whatever, I'm talking numbers out my butt now. From what I understood from the anime, is that it was just mostly mangas.
Okay.
It's funny too, because I kept thinking back to Love is Hard for an Otaku and their experiences in the manga store.
Mm-hmm.
And like the amount of traffic that was in those bookstores. And yeah, like I said, you just don't experience that here.
Yeah, that's true.
I wanted to bring it up because really, of the characters, the bookstore is probably the biggest one to talk about. But let's talk about our actual main character. He is also the creator of the manga that is of the series. He is the Skull Face. His name is Honda. What did you guys think of the main character?
Thought he was relatable, and his it's funny because you're just watching, very paper doll-esque type anime, and also he didn't really have facial features to distinguish very well, but he was incredibly relatable, and also like you could feel what he was going through in that moment, and I thought it did a really good job of kind of portraying himself, even though there was no skin.
Yeah, I loved how flighty he was. It was cracking me up where every little thing, like, oh, you scared me, or the phone would ring and he's like, I don't want to answer it because there's scary people on the other end of that phone and it's going to be so bad. And like, it's overly dramatic about every single little thing. And yet I can kind of get it. I kind of understand the perspective of the character. So yeah, totally connected. One of the most emotive skeletons that I've seen. I guess Overlord's pretty emotive too, but
I actually appreciated the way they would draw his like overly anxiety face with like the like tiny head but like really big eyes. Yeah, because it didn't. Unlike the chibi versions of a skeleton head, this kind of lended into the humor a little better, I think.
You just hate chibi.
Don't judge me.
And that was clearly when you went out of your way to diss Chibi. I'm gonna take the conversation over here. I'm gonna kick it in the face, and I'm like,
and you know what I really appreciate about this one? There was no like love triangle map like in another anime.
Just kick them all. You're just bringing them all in to kick them.
I found Honda likable, very likable, and I can relate to like not wanting to deal with customers. There's a reason I've stayed away from that type of industry. But it was kind of weird, like, why are you in this type of industry? I also would really love to hear the origin story of how he went from working in this store to then drawing stories about working in the store to getting that published and becoming a publisher, and then how that hasn't really changed his life very much because he still has to go to work. Even though I wonder if in the real guy, if he's now making enough money from his anime now, his manga, that he doesn't have to work in the bookstore, but he has to because he needs more source material if he's trapped himself in this industry. I had that thought today when I was prepping for the podcast.
That's torturous.
but yeah, he like I said, he's likable, he's charming, he's very inoffensive. He's not like one of the greatest characters of all time. He doesn't have an arc. He doesn't go through anything. But as far as a narrator and stuff, he worked really good.
I think one of the things I appreciated about him is he obviously cared about the work that he did. but he obviously was far from the best employee there.
Yeah, one of the others was always like,
yeah,
and one of the others was always like, oh, you're like me, we're half-assed about this. So yeah, totally relatable. I worked that hard.
Anyone want to have a theory on why he's drawn with a skull?
I was thinking about it a little bit, and maybe because this job is so stressful that it's just taxed him, and all that's left is skeleton.
That's better than anything I got.
Oh, really? I thought you came to the party with something.
No, other than maybe he just feels like he's a blank slate, and so there would be no facial expression. But I think yours sounds better. So, now I'm going to run us through all the characters that I wrote down for talking about. But just so our listeners know, these characters, I could not tell you their personality traits very well, but we will do our best. I'm going to list a character. I want everyone to try to say something about them, and then we'll move on to the next one, but this will probably go pretty fast. So our first up is Cammy, who has a longer name, but we're just going to call him. This is the paper bag. According to Wikipedia, Honda's best friend. I didn't get that in the anime, but
no.
They were always together.
They did talk together a lot. Probably the second most featured character. So what did you guys think of Paper Bag? Anything to say about him? And then, or you could do why you think he's in a paper bag.
I have no idea why he's in a paper bag, but he was very much almost a mirror of handa-san in that he was, just trying to get through his day, but he was also a likable person but pretty flighty and half-assed at his job.
Yeah. Okay. Yep. Kind of eccentric. And I would throw out a psychological guess that maybe, I don't know. I'm wondering if these people got to pick what they were going to be drawn as. I know a couple of characters do mention it. And so I'm really wondering if they all did. And who knows, maybe the paper bag is just a very strong desire to be really modest, or maybe to like grab something that is very well known and common.
Okay. Cammy was likable. Let's go to Hotai. This is the girl with bandages on her face.
Didn't know much about her, actually. She seemed like she could be replaced with anybody. Because I don't think she had a ton of scenes either.
I think she's the one that said, you're half-assed like me. So I think she's the one that said that. Yeah.
But she's on the night crew.
Yeah.
Yeah, but she was also behind. She seemed behind, like she was behind the counter a lot, doing registers. Okay,
got nothing there.
We have Lantern, the guy with the jack-o'-lantern for a face.
Not sure if it's a guy or a girl. I don't know.
Okay,
body shape, I could not tell.
Right. I thought the Lantern Head was always like the start of some sort of catastrophe, because they would point something out and all of a sudden everyone was like, oh my god, we're never gonna make it on time. So I don't know, likable character, I guess.
Easily recognizable. I was like, pumpkin head, I can write that down really easy. These next two were much harder. Okay, good, the fox mask.
I liked Fox Mask, actually. She had this dark personality about her.
Yeah, I liked her. Like, she was sassy about it. Like, I ain't going to no training.
Yep. Dark, dry humor.
Yep. Ko Omote, who wears an Omote mask, which is like the creepy spirit white face.
Don't remember anything about her.
Every time she appeared, I'm like, what are you? I don't remember what you're called. So, Rabbit Head. The only thing I remember about Rabbit Head is he does video games, but he never seemed to show up very often. I was like, I want to hear about the video game guy.
Right.
I thought Rabbit Head was a girl.
Okay, maybe.
Well, the only thing that I remember clearly about Rabbit Head was when Honda's talking about a video game or an anime that I think it's a manga that he was reading, where they were killing animals and turning them into food, and it showed Rabbit Head in
that's one of the rabbits.
Yeah, I got a kick out of that.
All right. Full face with the motorcycle helmet.
Troy's favorite.
Full face. Yeah.
Yeah, my second favorite, only because I can point out that they're very organized, and I actually really enjoyed them pointing that out. I was like, he's like, this. I'm organized because that makes sense. It makes my job easier, and it makes it easier for the customer. Why aren't we all doing this? And everyone's like, middle finger to him.
Stop making us feel bad.
Gas mask. I don't even know what he does in the store. He seems like he's always in the back. In among those shelves, and then he talks trash to the other employees. I thought he was a boss.
Yeah,
but
I thought he was a higher up too,
and maybe he is because he was
a shift lead.
that could be. He's night shift.
He does work night shift.
Mm-hmm.
Armor, the manager.
I liked manager. She was flighty as well, but also seemed to not. Well, was willing to throw just about anyone under the bus in order to get out of doing something important. I was wondering why they went to the movie together, but that wasn't really explained. So,
she's after the wholesaler, I think.
That's what I thought too.
Yeah, yeah. Honda thought she might like him, and it kind of sounds like Honda might like her a little bit because he went to the movie with her. Then he realized like, oh, she brought wholesaler. She seems way more interested in him, and that probably makes more sense. I liked her, like you said, that she was willing to throw people under the bus, but also like people come complain, she'd be like, right? And I'm like, wait, aren't you the manager? And you're just like, yeah, this is the worst. There's the pest mask, who's a section chief. She kind of just seems to show up to deal with problems when things get out of hand.
Mm-hmm. Reminded me a lot of the Fox mask.
Yeah, a little bit.
I mean, and there was a couple other ones. I really like the assistant manager who always knows just when to order, and books show up and like, oh my god, I can't believe he knew.
Like he's a mage.
Yes.
I love the part timers because they were all the same.
Oh, yeah. Yes,
they just don't matter.
Yeah.
He kept talking about how like integral they were to the business, but they obviously meant nothing.
Yep.
Or they don't stay around enough, like literally irreplaceable. Like in 6 weeks, we're gonna have a different one and stuff.
Right.
All right. So we'll go into the actual story now, and go through these episodes and see what comes out of that.
Not exactly a story.
So we start with Honda asking people what type of person he thinks works in a bookstore. And I do have to say at this point, I was like, just people who would work in a bookstore, thinking regular bookstore. I didn't realize this was a manga bookstore. It was very different. But he asked like his dad. His dad's like, I don't know, boring people, I guess. And he's like, oh, I got a job today, Dad.
Sounds very much like what some of your dad would say.
Yeah. The first customer we see him deal with, and I do like the way it's always presented, like there's Honda to like the left or the right, and then a silhouette will come in, and you're like, oh god, here we go, new customer, and then it would turn the camera around and you'd see what they look like. And this time it's like an old, super handsome, like actor looking guy, and
Hollywood.
He's like, I want to buy a manga for my niece. And he shows the picture, and it's like a yaoi smut doujinshi, and Skullface has to explain to him in English, that's porn, fan-made porn that we wouldn't care here. And he's trying to do that without offending him, and you can tell the look on the guy's face is he's just like defeated, like I've been looking all day, and you're not going to help me.
And also, Honda at this point admits that he's not very good with English either.
Yeah,
right. But it does seem like it's one of the reasons they'll hire you at the bookstore is because they get so many English customers. Knowing English is a part of the job, at least.
Useful.
Isn't that what someone says when he's like, what kind of person would work in a bookstore? Well, there's someone that speaks English.
Yeah, let's not ruin segments ahead because you already just described the whole episode. Let's see. Then what else happens? Oh, then we get a huge talk about boy love. I know Jeremy's favorite topic is boy love. And,
on.
So yes, this made me laugh. First, he has to deal with a Swedish customer who wants boy love. And it's funny, like, he speaks English to basically, if you're from any other country, he knows English. And so that maybe they can translate it from there. Then he gets pulled into a boy love praise war. So, like, there's really just girl customers standing around talking about how much they love boy love mangas. And it makes it very clear, like, that's one of the, like, there's shonen, there's boy love. They have their own section. It's huge. And these girls are standing around and they pull him in, like, what's a good boy love manga? And he's like, this one, I guess. They're like, that one's trash. This one's got naked buff men. And they're like, yeah, that's a great one. He's like, all right, I guess.
I loved how he drew the face. Yeah. Of the lady where she's like, she's so intense. She's like, oh, this is so good. Thank you so much.
And then another customer comes up to him and is like, do you think this character is a top or a bottom? Because I need this character to be a top or a bottom. And he's like, I guess you could just look.
You took the plastic wrapping off.
Yeah. Also, they put plastic wrapping on all their books.
Mm-hmm.
That's nice of them.
Right.
We don't do that in America.
In America.
We do it with our American comic books.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's partially because the store wants you to buy the book, not read it there, and then put it back on the shelf.
Right.
Kind of like the magazine racks in the supermarket.
Yeah.
What's the little slips? Like, one guy bought like 90 books, and the girl Armor came by and like would pull all these slips out, but I don't know what they were. And it was helping prep the book.
No, I noticed that a couple times too, and I was wondering the same thing. I don't know if there were receipts for each book or like that's how they keep track of inventory. I'm not sure.
All right, so in the next episode, we really talk about it really focuses on how they deal with stock, and especially in this episode, there's a holiday coming up on the normal release date, so everything got pushed a day early, so stock is hitting them extra hard. Not only would they have to do the regular stuff, but now they also have to do release day stuff. And we see everyone trying to get books onto the shelf and organize their shelves. And they talk about everyone has their own section. And we learn that Honda's section is American comics. So I'm guessing that's more like, not like single issues, but like hardcover volumes, right?
Probably.
Like the All Watchmen or Dark Knight Returns.
But they called out specifically comics, so I imagine it's all the American comics, such as like Spider-Man.
Right, probably omnibuses, though, where it's like series of comic books.
Yeah, I'm saying like not individual issues, but whole storylines. Like if you go buy the bigger volume, because he also said actually people tried to help him pick up his box and they start breaking their back, and he's like, Americans use heavier paper, more expensive paper than we do, so their books are really heavy.
I had no idea about that. That was actually really interesting to learn.
I actually thought it was interesting too that they talked about the difference between the release dates for manga and light novels, that some of them could come out days before the actual release date, but then if others go before the release date, they could get in trouble or something like that.
Yeah, actually, I found that the educational aspect of this anime was one of my favorite parts. Learning how this bookstore functions and how the producers and editors and stuff all work together.
I'm kind of 50-50 on it myself, because I'm like, that's really interesting, but also I don't know if I actually care. I do know now, if I ever get to go to Japan, like I hope to someday do, I will stop at a bookstore, because that's apparently a thing. But like I said, going into this, I was like, this is a thing? Okay, this is a thing, I guess. Also, we have Kami having to Kami takes the day off and comes back, and like his shelf just didn't get stocked. And so he's got double work to do. And they're like, we tried, man. Good luck. And then at the end of this episode, we meet Honda's editor, Azarasti, who's a seal.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, so, because he's... the fact he makes his manga is part of the story. So
yep.
would.
And I love how he says that you can be exchanged for like a hot looking dude. It's like, oh well, it could be someone with a personality.
You've got to quit ruining episodes because there's not much else to describe.
Isn't that this episode?
Nope, that's like in 7, 8 episodes, and like half of the. Yeah.
Then I'll shut up.
Thoughts?
This anime went by real fast. Okay, it's all together.
It was so fast.
The next episode, the publishing company reps visit, and they're like, "Hey, Honda, posters? You want to put up posters for us?" So basically, reps come from the publishing company to push specific books, and the bookstores are like, "Yeah, we've already got posters up, and there's only so much wall space." But they target Honda because he's a pushover.
Yep. Especially with stuff that looks handmade.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. Honda, it actually that there's actually a through line of the episode that Honda has an appreciation for handmade pop-ups, and they kept calling stuff pop-ups, and I guess that's just like a stick or a piece of paper you would put next to the book, like, "Hey, this is really exciting" or "new." Mm-hmm. I guess that's what they would call pop-ups. At one point, he wanted to get more Psychopaths books from the publisher in this episode.
Names we recognize.
Yeah.
Psycho.
Yeah, exactly.
It really doesn't help that I don't read manga, I don't work in retail, and I don't know Japanese culture as well as I'd like. That, and then I watched this episode, which all three of those, if you have all three of those, this is definitely a recommended anime. Moving on. Honda talks about customers who get lost in manga, where they're like, "I'm going to go to the bookstore and pick something out," and there's so much there that they just kind of wander and get, he calls it getting lost in the manga. And then Lantern has a customer who was asked a recommendation, and he has to ask Honda for help. That happens. That kind of brought up a question in my head: is how much do they have to read to do this job?
I think that's a huge part of it.
But it didn't look like reading was part of the job. So not only do you have to work all day, then you have to go home and keep up with at least a large amount of reading so that you can do recommendations.
In the outro, it shows him laying in his bed reading a book, and he gets so tired the book falls on his face. I think that's exactly what's happening there.
And he does seem to enjoy books, but there's only one episode I remember him mentioning, "I want a book."
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I that was something that in this part of this episode, for the few minutes I had, I thought about.
Moving on.
He gets a French customer who wants a recommendation for a manga for an 11-year-old, and he has to run into the back and pull all the employees, and they're like, "What about this one?" And what was really funny is that the guy buying the manga is like, "Yeah, she speaks Japanese, but I want it in French." Yeah. And so he had to go, and he does find it, and he gives it to her. He's like, "Yay, I did it. I'm happy."
Isn't that because he remembered that because Full Face comes in and asks them 3 weird questions, or like, "Oh, what kind of manga would you get for da 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 da?" And they were like, "That was weird."
I don't remember that.
No? Okay.
It probably happened, but
no, there is another aspect to this anime we haven't mentioned. It goes fast. They talk fast.
Yes. I found myself pausing to read quite a bit.
And I was writing. So I'd be like, so I had to read what they say, write something down, and then look up, and I'm like, they just said like 3 more things.
Yep. And like, there's things flashing across the screen, text that's not read aloud as well.
Right.
Lots of it.
So I was constantly battling with myself. Do I go back? Did I miss something important? I think I get the gist of the storyline. I'm sure Jason and Jeremy are paying attention.
I rewounded so much, but there's not much there.
But then Jason's favorite episode happens. The customer service training. Tell us about it, Jason.
Which didn't seem to be optional, which is pretty great. So they, the company that owns the bookstore, which seems like this is a chain of bookstores, is what this implies.
Yeah, I also got the impression it's a popular bookstore. Like, Like if you the American version of Barnes and Noble, right?
Yeah, and so it was pretty great because they all go to this customer service training where, what did he say? Where these rankings are eternal. He's like, eternally doesn't matter. And so he goes to this thing. He meets this pretty lady on the way there, and the first thing. So I've been in this kind of training before, and it's funny because it's all, normal corporate isms, and then as soon as you get into the role play, it's, I'm angry customer, blah, blah, blah. What are you gonna do? And it's all, you're just thrown back. So this is what they do to this lady. They're like, smile, make sure you're smiling, tell me hello, smile.
So
and it was the corporate smile. Like you had to do the corporate version of a smile, not just your own smile. So everyone was getting it wrong because they were trying to match this thing that was not them. And so everyone's just in this tizzy, and the tiki head guy was fantastic because he's just got this angry looking tiki face mask on, and then he switches to like the smile face, and Honda goes, oh my gosh, he's so amazing.
But my favorite part in this segment is when they had to team up in pairs and smile at each other and then criticize each other's smile to help them get better. And when he turns to his guy's not smiling. And then his guy's like, you should relax your shoulders more. And the teachers come up to Honda and are like, did you hear that criticism? You need to do better. And I'm like, well, that guy's not even smiling. Why are you not paying attention to that? It was weird.
And then the pretty girl that he had met before comes up, and she starts to like do like the smile, but it's not really. It's like her mouth looks like a box. Her mouth looks like a triangle, or a rectangle. And they're like, "Oh, how amazing this is! How are you today?" Yeah,
I like the volleyball lady. And they start asking her questions, and she goes like into panic mode and just starts messing up.
Like I understood that entire thing because I've been through many corporate trainings for customer service, so this was pretty great for me.
At the end, he gets an actual nice smile from the pretty girl.
Yeah,
I thought we were gonna get a love interest here, not from the pretty girl, from the other nice, like cute girl that comes up to him and starts like friendly banter right after because the cute girl shows up, he sees her and she just walks by and he's like, oh, there's a pretty girl. And then another girl comes up to him and starts talking to him really nicely. He's like, I was like, oh, this will be cute. And then that girl disappeared. And I'm like, why were we even introduced to that girl? Whatever.
That happens a lot in this anime though.
Yeah, to show that Honda is actually kind of a catch.
That's not what I got. I would like to see a picture of Honda in real life, though, because I'll bet he's just harsh on himself.
Probably.
Okay. We find out that the Fox Mask girl has to go next, and she starts complaining, but she does go.
Well, it's mandatory.
She goes, your directions were awful. I need someone else's directions.
So in the next episode, a book suddenly gets popular and it leaves the entire shelf empty due to that. So Honda starts complaining with Armor, and then he has to help a Brazilian customer. And the Brazilian customer is like being all touristy, and then he's like, hey, why is Japanese manga in black and white? And Honda has to do BS English time. And he just starts rattling off things about cost and time. I don't know. He just made up stuff. And the Brazilian customer is like, all right. And he leaves, and he's like, well, you're not going to buy. Whatever.
The guy was actually looking for directions to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's right. He asked for directions.
Yeah. So Honda has to go outside and use English again to try and explain to him how to get to this other destination. The guy wasn't even there for books.
Yeah. That one was pretty funny. Then Honda has to deal with a phone call from a publisher who wants a manga artist to do a book signing, which, that happens, and Honda's all excited. But then Armor's like, but what if they're a tweeter. Because apparently if there's manga artists who will tweet and then bookstores will get overrun, not being able to deal with the crowds that the artist draws. And they make very clear that this is a situation to situation kind of hazard. It's very different for everybody.
Do you do the tweeting?
Well, yeah, when the book signer shows up, Honda's like, do you do the tweeting? And he's like, yeah. Oh, no, you can't do the tweeting. that one was pretty funny. And then these two customers come in asking for erotic manga. And he's like, oh, it's over there. And they look and they're like, no. And they hug each other. Yay, manga. And he's like, oh, we have this tiny section, but look at the boy love section. They're like, oh, that's awesome. And that's, but the section, he's actually talking about what's banned or, what's considered dirty or smutty and isn't sold at the bookstore and what is. And, he gets a customer call complaining about an erotic picture he saw in a shonen magazine. And he's like, that shouldn't have been in there. And Nanda's like, all right. And the guy's like, what'd you think? I haven't read that issue. And they talk about there was stuff that wasn't that risque that got banned, but then they get a new shipment and it's new illustration books and there's full on erotic material in it. And he's like, it's really weird what they banned, but it is what it is. That's the bookstore life.
Yep.
Then they get a new employee. This is Kendo, who wears a kendo mask. I thought this was going to be a thing. This apparently was not much of a thing.
The difference is he came from the distribution center, so he's got a strong back. So everyone admires him because he can lift heavy objects.
Plus, he's very proper and refined. He's basically this ideal employee who shows up, and I was like, oh, he's gonna have issues or be a jerk, and nope, he's just a nice guy who's really good at his job.
Yeah,
and everyone hates him because he's so nice.
It really is not a single story with an arc of any kind, but it's just a whole bunch of related
random events in his life
that have happened, which it's cool. It's cool. It's just very different.
Like Mushishi.
No,
yes. But even Mushishi did have a thread, but I think if here's
the big difference. Episodic. Mushishi, especially each story has a theme. There's not really themes here. These are real life events that are just hey, if you're this is almost like a behind the scenes kind of thing, which is really interesting that an anime would do that. I'll say that. It's kind of difficult for this podcast.
Yeah.
It's difficult for the podcast.
Yeah, it's almost even though they have a theme that they'll state for the episode or for the skit almost, it's more like just a skit or just an event. Yeah.
Right. Let's see. There's Honda's worried about book shortages in this one. He tries. An old customer is looking for a book and he can't find it, and then the staff realize the computer says it's there, so it has to be in the boxes, and so they start digging like crazy through boxes, which is something that happens sometimes if they're behind on stocking stuff. There's a lot of talk about we use the computer to know where a book is, and then when that's not true, there's this whole series of events that can happen. Then we learn about fairs, and this really confused me because a fair is just basically kind of a special event where they set up a display case extra special.
Sounds like a sale, like a special sale day.
Yeah, but when they first set it up, they're talking about how in this fair we're having, all of them are going to be manga that are being turned into an anime or a movie, coming up. So that's why we have to have these fairs. And they do one fair where they put in a special bookmark that has both the anime character and the live action character actor, and he's told to put it in with the anime or the manga character on the front, and customers are buying that, and they do that so no one will want to steal it for the actor on the other side, but customers are buying it and like, I was told there was the actor on this bookmark, and he's like, turn it around, and they're like, oh, there it is, thank you, and it happens like over and over. We hear about some other fairs, but actually what I really liked about this episode is we find out fairs are actually Honda's favorite part of his job, because he likes doing, creating the little pop-ups, the little signs on the shelves and stuff. And I can relate to that, having a very, if you have a tedious job where you're like, I do this every day, having something with creativity is like the best moment of the week. So that was actually a moment I related to. So in the next episode, we see Honda going to a movie with Armor and a new character called Wholesaler, who is a wholesaler.
Whoa, wait.
Blowing minds. Do you guys understand the difference between the wholesaler and the publisher? Because up to this point, they've called the publisher when they're like, hey, we need a book. But the wholesaler also has more books that they might go to them. They're like a backup, or are they the main source of the books?
I think if you're go ahead, Jeremy.
I was going to say, it sounds like the wholesaler is basically the one that markets to people that want to buy in bulk online. I don't know though. It didn't seem really clear to me other than that.
Yeah, I think the big difference that I saw in the anime specifically was that the publisher is who they would get their new publications from. And the wholesaler is who they got their large bulk weekly orders from to restock existing orders.
It's almost like a warehouse kind of thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So they could probably get the same book from both. It's just that the quantity would be more from the wholesaler, I believe.
Whereas the producer, of course, is the source of the books.
Right, but then they would give
Publisher.
Yeah, but the publisher would only print so many, but then they would probably either give those rights or printing rights to the wholesaler so they could get them to bookstores in bulk.
And the impression that this anime gives is, while many bookstores have issues with the wholesaler, Honda's wholesaler is actually a really nice guy. And Honda's he goes on to this movie with him and Armor. Is it a date? It's hard to tell what's really going on there. We don't really get a lot of depth into it, and it doesn't really matter in the story. But we also get a story of like Honda was missing a book. The computer said he had it. He couldn't find it, and the wholesaler actually goes and finds it for him. So he has a respect for that guy. This was actually one of my favorite of the segments. This is when Honda gets invited to a mixer, and every other member of the staff is like, nope. They're out. But it's kind of special for him as both someone who creates manga and as someone who works in the bookstore. And he's invited. It's kind of just a chance for him to hobnob with the other people of the... What am I? Not occupation, industry. Industry.
Yep.
And so he goes there, and he mostly just kind of just sits there and listens. That the store owners are all complaining, and there's a guy they call God, because they're all like, yeah, no one answers faxes as soon as they come in. He's like, I answer every fax right away, so I can stay efficient. They're like, what is wrong with you? Make it look bad.
Yep.
But then one of the guys who's complaining starts talking about the Skull-Face manga and how he finds the guy a little hoity-toity, and he's like, it describes our lives, but he's a little, up his own. And the guy who put this together is like, Honda. No, that's Honda. He's like, no, it's like Honda. He's like, no, it is Honda. He's like, oh. Why are you nice to wholesalers?
He doubled down. Oh my God.
Do not do the accent, Jeremy.
So good. I love English.
Yes. Okay. We had this conversation before we started. It's very funny when Honda speaks English.
It's not so funny when Jeremy does it.
But yeah, when you try to like explain to him, hey, he said this line and it sounded like this. Oh, I think I'm being racist. Sorry. So you can,
I love it.
you should watch it. It is funny when he does it, and it's done for comedic effect. He's very clearly making fun of the fact that his English is bad and that he sounds silly when he says it. But if you try to do it and you do the accent, then it's gray territory. We're just going to stay away from it.
So I speak enough Russian to know that I probably speak a version of Russian that is English. So
right.
I've earned this. I earned this in a different language.
In the next episode, we have a customer who buys 90 books, and this is where they helped him with the slips, and they provide him bags and like, can I help you carry them? He's like, no, I want to put one in my backpack and carry the other two, and he just like struggles to get out the door, and I was like, why did he just buy 90?
That's me in every grocery store.
Well, he originally goes, well, this big order, we could ship it to you, no problem. He's like, no, I need them today, and he's like, dead in the eyes.
Yep.
And even Foxmask is like, I would have just ordered that online. And everyone's like, you can't say that. We work at a retail store. She's like, what? For giant orders, it's way more efficient. Why would I not say that?
Trying to put us out of business.
Then we get the part with he's helping a customer and he notices he's missing a finger.
And it happens to be the pinky at the knuckle.
Yeah. And he's very freaked out about it. He's like, I'm going to do good customer service. It doesn't matter. And then the guy's like, thank you. It helps him find the book. And he's like, I want to ship it, though. And so he has to help him fill out a shipping order. And then when he goes into the back to get the shipping order, they're like, yeah, that's to a prison. He's sending manga to prisoner, criminals.
Someone in a prison, yeah.
And so that was the time Honda got to help a criminal.
He had slick back hair. He looked like very Yakuza.
Yes. And then, okay, so I didn't get this joke, and it's got to be a cultural thing. But right after this, two more customers walk up, and they're wearing like leopard print, like a guy in a leopard print shirt, and his girlfriend's got blonde hair, and Honda's like, ah, and then that's the end. That's the whole joke, and I'm like,
I don't know what that means.
I think there's a type of people in Japan, and that it freaked him out that he met them, but like it doesn't translate to our culture, so I don't get the joke.
Yeah, I didn't either.
Okay. Welcome to Baka Baka Baka, where we don't understand what
an anime exclusive podcast that doesn't understand Japanese culture.
Yes. We earned our name.
That is talking about an anime just exclusively dealing with manga, which we don't read. Again, this is we made choices with this anime.
It's great.
Okay.
Great. Premium content right here.
Then we talk about children, and because Honda has to help two kids, or he helps a kid, and the kid like pays for it with himself, but he didn't have enough money with the tax. And he starts crying. The mom shows up and helps, and so it was fine. And then so Honda talks about kids in the store and talks with the other characters about like what they thought, and they tell stories of like the parents will go off to like look at not or mature content stuff, and the kid will come around like in the boil-up section, like, no, you gotta get out of here. What are you doing? You're supposed to be with your dad. And then we get the father and son from Texas.
Yes.
Who were just looking for Naruto manga, and he's like, right there, it's Naruto. They start crying. They're so happy, and my favorite is like Honda said, "I'm pretty sure you can buy Naruto in Texas."
Yeah, and then also he saw that he's wearing a
Dragon Ball Z shirt.
Dragon Ball Z t-shirt. He's like, no, Naruto's not their only anime they like.
That would happen to me. I might go in and buy something for Firefly, and just be like, "Oh, the Firefly, it's so awesome," while I'm wearing a Star Wars shirt. And that happens.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with mixing and matching.
They just need a crossover. Star Wars and Firefly.
I have that shirt. I have a shirt with Han Solo and Mal Reynolds standing back to back with their
that's
both
cool.
ships in the background.
I like that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And when I say I have that shirt, my wife stole it because it didn't fit me, and now it's her shirt.
Oh,
But I found it. I like this joke. This was the editor talking to Honda and saying, like, I want to turn Skullface into a live action movie, and we'll get like a handsome actor to play you because then your personality would work. And
Well,
then
no,
they
he goes,
go ahead.
yeah. He goes, well, is it going to be someone that matches my personality? He's like, really doesn't matter if they're hot.
yeah.
Okay, so on to episode 9. A cute girls ask for a help with finding a book, but it's all sold out and no one is carrying it. Honda goes back and talks to face welder mask guy, and he's like, "Yeah, I mean, it's old. They'll probably reprint it." And there was a bunch of other customers that show up asking for it at the same time, right? Like 4 other customers are like, "Hey, do you have that book?" And he's like, "No." And
I think this is the book he wants too.
Yeah, and he realized like he hadn't read it, but it was out of print, and they just don't carry it anymore. There's no way to get it. And then we start talking about. Well, before we start talking about the deathbed books, the staff started complaining about there's too many mangas being published, and they all look at Honda, and Honda's like, "Oh, I make one of those."
Yeah, contributing to the problem.
Yeah, he feels caught in the middle. But then we get the explanation on deathbed books, which are books that are no longer selling, taking up space on the shelf, and they have to send back to the publisher to die. And we get like different characters, how they deal with them. Who is it? Is it the Hotai, the bandage girl, who has a problem doing it? She doesn't like to get rid of deathbed books. Her shelves are. She always like, I feel bad about it. It might have been a Mote mask, but one of the girls had problems with their shelves, and even Honda, like he's trying to cram a book onto a shelf, and he tears the cover a little bit, and the book's like, "Oh, you're hurting me! You're doing it too hard, Handa-san.
You're going to rip the plastic."
I
love how it has hallucination at the bottom.
Just in case.
And I found it really interesting because he points out like sometimes the deathbed books are like in the same set, and like some of the books are selling well, and he has ones where like book 4 and the final volume are deathbed books, but the rest of the series sells well. And if he's like, what do I do if I don't have these, the middle and the ending? That would look bad if someone came in to buy the set, but also these don't sell and they're taking up precious space on the shelves I need. But he also talks about how, books get revivals all the time and they come back off the deathbed. An author will die. This is where they talked about there was a big disease breakout, and so like a manga got popular again and people came back for it, and so they had to restock it. And then at the end, the book that was from the beginning does get a reprint, and the guy, the face welder guy, mask guy, saved him a copy. And he's like, yay. And then we go on to the next episode. No thoughts on that, guys? All right, moving on to the next episode. What are good qualities for working at a bookstore? That is what episode 10 is about.
So it ties it all back. See, it was one big story.
Sure. Honda gives his opinion. He's like, it's these features, it's all this stuff. And Armor gives her opinion about organization. Like, she thinks you have to be super organized. And we get the segment of like them checking out Full Face's shelves, and they're perfect. They're sorted by publisher and volume and all, like, everything's perfect. And I didn't know they have this. They have drawers underneath the shelves, and he pulls out his drawers, and then Full Face comes up, like, "What are you doing?" Nothing. Just looking.
Because Honda was like totally expecting to see just a disaster in the drawer.
It's all just hidden.
And then Gas Mask is like, oh, Full Face organized my section. They're like, how do you know it was him? He's like, because it's perfect and you all suck.
So true.
But then they go and they ask, or Honda asks Pest Mask, what do you think makes a good bookstore employee? And she says people who are like nonviolent. He's like, geez, I guess anyone can get this job.
Low bar. Yeah.
That kind of hurt his feelings, I think. Then we talk about staff shuffles. Like we had talked about how everybody has their own section. You know, Honda has American Comics, and he remembers when he was given that, and he's like, I don't know anything about that. How am I supposed to give recommendations? And that just happens sometimes. They decide to shuffle people around and change their sections, and he's just happy he doesn't have the video game section, which Rabbit Head seems to enjoy. So I don't. Well,
apparently the video game section is terrifying.
To be fair, Rabbit Head's face is drawn with a permanent smile, so I'm assuming he enjoys his section.
Could be part of the mask.
But yeah, that was interesting. Again, I kind of be interested in learning more about the American comics in the bookstore and how they do. You know, does Honda read Watchmen? That'd be cool to know. Anyway, Kendo gets put on comic magazines. Oh, and he figures he did a good job with American Comics because they haven't taken him off it yet.
All of these are very, very important points to the plot.
Okay, so here's a random thought I had, though. American Comics kind of feels like putting someone out in left field. Like, this is a Japanese bookstore of Japanese manga. We're going to put you on this thing that almost no one ever buys. That,
or at least it's just it's so far left field, like you say, that none of us really want to do it, and
right.
We can make you do it.
Okay. Then we get the most important segment ever, the alternate universe story, where he has to fight a monster who wants his book order, and everyone has horns now.
Yeah.
Feudal Japan fantasy world, but he's still a bookstore employee.
And all the customers are just enormous monsters.
He gets asked about like books that were moved, and he's like, I spotted a suspicious customer, and then that customer shows up. He's like, no, I'm a G-man. I work for the store. You should be more careful, and you should be more careful, and don't leave books laying out where they can get robbed.
No.
I love the customer that then full armor has to then deal with as he lops off her arm.
Yes.
Which is
lots of editing tonight.
What a night.
That's like the fifth time they've opened the door. Okay. What was really weird about this felt like a very real experience of like a frequent customer who thinks he's special and gets special treatment and then freaks out in the store. But then it's told as in it's a monster, so it chops off Armor's arm. And then the department head 10 guy, who I don't think we've met in the regular world, so I don't even know if he's actually an employee, shows up and like, I will help you.
It was very anime how he blocked the shot of
right.
the customer coming down with his like
came in at the last second for the save, like I am here.
Yeah, very anime moment.
Yep.
Then back to the real world. We don't want to stay there, so we're going back to the real world. Honda has to deal with a rude customer on the phone, and everyone's like, "You handled that really well." And it's like, "It was just like that was bad. That was rough."
I swear, Honda has anxiety after watching this.
Yeah.
Like clinical anxiety.
Yep.
Then right after that, he gets this nice old lady customer, and she asks for help with a book. He tells her where it is. He's like, "Do you want me to go get that?" She's like, "No, I just love being in bookstores so much, and I always forget how much I love them, and it's so great here, and thank you so much for your help." And he's so overwhelmed by the the difference in the customers. He runs into the back and starts crying. And everyone like has to pump him back up, and then they're like, "Hey, she's asking for you again." So he goes back out, and she's like, "I just wanted to say thank you." And he's like, "Oh my goodness!" And his head explodes.
Yeah.
And then he's terrified that the next person is going to be really mean because she was so nice.
Right.
Karma.
But then he gets back to work, no problem. So it's not
That's
because the bell rang.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's right. He said it kind of resets him and just kind of forgets the last couple customers, anyways.
Yep.
Kind of what every episode did for me. I had trouble remembering the previous one.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
Yep.
And then in the next episode, Armor's like, "Hey guys, I need you to do something." And he's like, "Wait, what?" And she's like, "Put on Santa hats." Because she wants to sell a series that I did not recognize. But she's like, "We could sell the entire complete like book set if we wear Christmas hats. That'll help." And they don't want to, but she's like, "I'll make you do wrapping in the children's section." And they're like, "Oh my God, no." And so they wear them. And then what's really funny is someone does buy that book set and comes up and is like, "But I want it gift wrapped." And Honda's like, "Okay, we have bags or wrapping paper." And the guy's like, "I'll take this wrapping paper." Honda didn't know how to do wrapping paper, but to pumpkin or lantern and Komote show up and help him.
Yep.
And then it's on to New Year's, and they just do it's all like, "Okay, how are we decorating for New Year's now?"
Well, and he basically said there is no difference between the way we do Christmas and New Year's. It's just the decorations look a little different.
He does point out like how hellish Christmas is, but I think that's true in retail.
Yeah,
anywhere,
everywhere.
And then another one of my favorite ones, and even though it's the very last segment, he actually gets put onto the late shift. Yeah. It doesn't really explain why, but he has to help close. And Armor apologizes for not staying to work overtime and helping them, but she has to go. And they're like, "It's not a big deal. You can go." We meet the part-timers, who are all people with just the word part-timer in front of their face. I like this though. The part-timers, they're chosen to say like out loud, like, "We're closing, it's time to leave," but they're not allowed to make eye contact, so they have to stare at the ceiling while they walk through the store, declaring that so as not to feel like they're attacking anyone.
And we have so many intercoms here that you never have to really worry about how you would navigate that if you had to walk among the customers.
And then while he's manning the door, a customer walks in past him, and then he has to get them back out. He realizes they're American, so he has to use English, and he does his best. And we're not going to say what he said, but it was very funny.
That was great.
Not only is he now like losing his mind that he's let a customer in, but then when he realizes they're English, he has a full like internal anxiety breakdown. Yep. Like, what am I gonna do? But he does a good job of letting them know, "Hey, the customer or the store's closing."
Yep.
And then he has to close a register, and he nails it, which is where what the computer says, how much money you have per the computer and how much money you actually have in hand. He has to count, and he gets it perfectly matched. He's like, "Yeah, I did it!" But then 2 registers over, face welder. No, gas mask is at 0 too, but face welder is 5,000 yen off. And so the gas mask is like, "Oh my God, no, I'm scared. And he's all counting it. And then it turns out that till is also at 0, and they're all like, "Yay." And then they go home for the night. And Honda like looks back at all the books, all the boxes of books that have to be stocked in the morning. He's like, "Well, I guess I have a lot of work to do tomorrow."
Yeah. Where I worked, if your till was off that anything over like $1 or $5, it came out of your paycheck. So like it was a big thing.
So my wife works in a grocery store and it has done registers. I remember her telling me about closing registers all the time. So I actually, because I watched this, I was like, "Oh, that's neat." I pulled her in and I'm like, "Hey, can you watch this and tell me if it's funny?" And she laughed and she's like, "That's so true. That's how it is. You know, you freak out and you're so happy." And that's when I realized, like, oh, this is very funny for people who very much are part of what's going on here. And that wasn't me. I'm sorry. Okay, so let's go to our. Oh, do we have any closing thoughts?
I thought this was interesting. It almost wasn't anime. Even like just all the experiences that I've had, like this is what you would see as a definition for slice of life, right? Like this is more slice of life than any slice of life anime ever because it's actual events.
Right, it's a real slice of this guy's life.
Right. Yeah. So it was really interesting to watch. I'm actually kind of glad we did because it was a different learning experience as far as what people put out there as far as storytelling medium, even though it really wasn't a theme or story here. But I was wondering if it would work, and I don't know if I'd ever like pick up a second season of this, but it was enjoyable while watching.
Yeah, as far as I was really curious how this was going to work for the podcast, and I think I'm in the boat that I would probably avoid anything that's skit based like this quite so much in the future. I think the line is probably just a little bit on this side of like comic artist assistant, maybe, because it was a little bit skit based too, but it had an overarching story.
Even Where's Love was also skit based. Really, it felt like here's a section, but then there was like a string of story that went through everything.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, I agree. I'm glad that we watched it, but I'm glad we actually watched it on the podcast. But I think in the future, this is the kind of thing I would definitely watch off the podcast and then just recommend to you guys.
It was helpful, especially with how busy all these hosts were.
Yeah,
with the exception of myself, that it was short. And I have watched a short comedy series before. It was I'm married to an otaku, or help. I'm married. I don't speak. My husband doesn't speak. It was something about a regular girl who marries an otaku husband. She doesn't know how to communicate with him, and they were just short little mini episodes. But there was a character arcs and stuff through it, even though it was short 11-minute episodes, and I really enjoyed that series. So I don't have a problem with the 11-minute series. I think one of the harder aspects of it was that it was true. It was real stories. It wasn't actually people having like a writer. I'm going to have this character have to face this dilemma and overcome these challenges. It was like, hey, this is my real life. And, these are funny things that happen to me. Like I said, it's very behind the scenes, which I think it was cool that we got to do it.
Yeah.
It probably wouldn't recommend it in the future. With the exception of, I thought like, man, it'd be cool to see some anime based on historical events, but just like a regular guy's life is a little bit rough.
Yeah. I was thinking about how this would apply to something like Isekai Quartet, because I'm partway through that and absolutely loving it. It's a little bit skit based, but not really. And it definitely has an overarching story, but it's also very short. So I don't actually, after watching it more, I just don't think that there's enough substance to fill the episode. So that's actually kind of been interesting as a test for that as well. Yeah.
All right. Let's go to final reviews. Jeremy, you picked it. What'd you think?
I enjoyed it. It certainly didn't. I wasn't irritated to spend my time with it. I think it helped that it was 10 minutes approximately per episode. Of course, I did kind of binge watch the 10 minutes because I had to find time here and there. So, but the strange thing for me was that the episode itself, even though I knew it was only 10 minutes, I still found myself checking in the middle. Like, is this over? Like, it feels like it's too long. And that is a really strange conundrum for me because I wouldn't give it any worse than a 3. I'd give it a 3 out of 5. It's not great for me, but it's also not bad. But it's strange that I actually was still feeling like time was dragging on a little bit. 10 minutes. Very, very strange.
Jason, what do you think?
I give it a 3. Like Jerry said, it's not bad, but it's also not fantastic. There's no story to kind of dig your teeth into here. It's like having a conversation with someone and them telling you about their experiences at work. So it was fun. There's some decent comedy in there, and yeah, that's really it.
A 3 from me, but I feel like if I was super into manga, if I had worked a retail job, or if I knew more about Japanese culture, or like if I had lived in Japan, I feel like this would be much higher for me. I feel like what was presented to me was well made, and it just didn't have a personal connection. So a 3 for me. Our next anime is Dororo. This is actually made by the same. The original manga was made by the same guy who made Astro Boy. They have done a remake. There was already an anime before. They've done a remake. It's been pretty popular. It's about a guy who has to kill demons to get back his body parts. And it is a 24-episode series, so we are watching episodes 1 through 12, and then we will finish the series in the episode after that.
I'm super excited for this. I've been keeping an eye on it and checking every single time that I had the opportunity to choose.
There's a couple of cool series out right now. Rise of the Shield Hero, I've been highly recommended, but over my dead body will I pick an isekai right now? So, I know you, and I'm perfectly fine with watching it. I just couldn't bring myself to on purpose pick an isekai, even though I actually want to see Shield Hero too, but I want to see this as well. So picking this, and I haven't picked one that takes 2 episodes in a while. I usually try to shy away from those so you guys can pick them, but I'm picking it anyway. To fill a little bit of runtime, I'm now going to give my One Punch Man season 2 non-spoiler review to you guys, because everyone's been talking about it and the different animation. I do think the animation was worse this season. Clearly, it's definitely sub of the original part. It did not blow my mind, but I absolutely love the story of this season, of season 2. The characters of King and Saitama, how their interactions together were fantastic. I do feel like Genos kind of got sidelined a little too much this season, but that's all right.
That's too bad.
And a couple other characters that they like introduce like big deals, and then they don't really get some time to shine. But the bad guy of this season, the hunter, the hero hunter, wow, what a great character! He was super interesting, and I love how he plays into the theme of One Punch Man. A villain, a human villain who wants to be a monster, while also in the story there's monsters that the heroes are having to deal with, and the dichotomy of what that all means. I absolutely love the story of this season. I do wish some of the action scenes were better.
Is One Punch Man season 2 something that we would watch on the podcast?
We never watched season 1. We've talked about this. I think it'll be more apt for a mini-sode.
That's right.
And so I assume at some point we will do a spoiler-filled mini-sode and just really go to town on it. Rather than
then we could watch. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. Then, with that said, we will wrap up here. So, if you have thoughts on Skullface, Bookseller, handa-san, feel free to leave us a comment on our Twitter at Baka Podcast, or an email, theanimebakaclub@gmail.com, or leave a comment wherever you found this podcast, and they'll get back to us. We really appreciate it when we get comments. Those are absolutely fantastic. With that, it's time for us to go. Let's say goodbye.
Thanks for listening.
Have a great week.
Sayonara.